fighting about money in a 3-year relationship, me, 24F, and partner, 29M. How do I handle this situation? My boyfriend, 29M, and I, 24F, are both enrolled in medical school together and have been in a loving and supportive relationship for 3 years. We first met at university. He is a soldier who secured his spot here through the Army, which means he enjoys a steady income. In many countries, the Army offers positions in dental and medical schools while paying regular wages during the duration of education, with the understanding that the graduates will work for the Army afterward. Additionally, he worked for several years prior to attending university. This situation presents a significant difference between us. He arrived at school with savings and a consistent income, while I do not have such financial security. My finances are mainly derived from a small scholarship, support from my parents who I am incredibly grateful for, as I would not be able to pursue this career without them, and a modest part-time job. Although I would like to work more, my studies are extremely demanding, leaving me little opportunity to do so. I had set aside some savings, but obviously not as much as he has. This dynamic introduces another major difference. He must maintain perfect grades, cannot afford to fail any significant exams, and should not exceed the minimum time required for his studies. If he fails, it would severely limit his options for specialties and potentially where the Army will assign him after graduation. He wishes to become a surgeon, and not succeeding would jeopardize that goal. Conversely, I have a degree of flexibility in my education. Studying longer would incur additional costs, but it wouldn't significantly affect my future career choices, as external parties often discount the length of time taken to complete the program, as long as one graduates satisfactorily. Additionally, the specialty I prefer is less difficult to secure. This disparity has influenced how we approach our education and shaped our relationship dynamic. Since we met in the first semester, we have been virtually inseparable. Not a single exam has been taken independently, and we have always prepared together. It has always been clear that when significant tests are on the horizon, his success takes precedence. This arrangement stems not from coercion, but from a genuine desire to support him, as I care deeply about our relationship and future together, just as I hope to achieve my own goals. Over the past 3 years, this commitment has led me to risk my academic standing to ensure his success. Thankfully, I have not yet faced a failure, but I have come dangerously close several times. I emphasize this to illustrate that he remains my top priority, and I continuously put his needs first. However, an escalating concern between us has revolved around finances. Given the high costs of medical education in our country, we both needed to purchase a significant amount of equipment and materials for practical courses and examinations. We each covered our basic expenses, which are already quite substantial. However, to mitigate risks, there are numerous additional items available that can improve our chances of success. Understandably, he could never forgive himself if he failed due to not acquiring a crucial tool or material that could assist him. Consequently, he has opted to spare no expense to avoid that fate. He has purchased nearly every helpful item and has invested in a range of equipment that enables us to practice at home. While I helped source these items and bring them home, he has primarily funded their costs, as I lack the financial means to do so. Our situation outside of school mirrors this trend. He is older, enjoys a steady income, and has moved beyond the financial struggles of being a broke student. Therefore, he owns a car and frequently uses it, while I rely on public transportation. During stressful periods, he prefers takeout over cooking, while I typically settle for basic meals when alone. He enjoys participating in outings and trips, which I cannot afford independently. These situations may not pose difficulties if he did not expect me to adopt his lifestyle and accompany him in these experiences. When we study together in the days leading up to exams, he struggles to understand why I might waste time cooking and anticipates that I will simply eat takeout with him. He expects me to keep pace with him when traveling, insisting I join him in his car to avoid wasting time. When it comes to practicing at home, he desires my presence, even though it is his equipment. At times, I feel pressured to use it since I sacrificed my own practice time at school to support him, leading me to feel obligated to make up for that lost time in some way if I want any chance of passing. The issue is that in many instances, if not most, I cannot repay him for these expenses: food, fuel, equipment, materials, etc. due to my limited financial resources. Both of us firmly believe that individuals should cover their own costs, creating an implicit expectation for me to compensate him. I want to clarify that I am making every effort to contribute. I have depleted my savings completely, stretched every dollar each month, relied on credit for materials, and borrowed money from my parents. I have essentially mobilized every cent I had at my disposal. The problem is that he too has run out of money. About 90% of his expenditure is tied to academic costs, materials, equipment, etc., with only a small portion allocated for lifestyle-related expenses. He has even had to take out loans himself. However, as our classes carry on and we require additional materials, every purchase he makes now necessitates my reimbursement, which I cannot fulfill. I have always communicated openly and honestly about my financial situation. Whenever we discuss or purchase items I know I cannot fully afford, I express, "I won't be able to repay you entirely for this. I understand its necessity, and I will assist you in any way possible. I have no expectation of accessing it, and I am fine with that because I cannot contribute financially in the same way you can." Regardless of how transparent I have been, he often insists that I use the items for practice, which benefits him, or that it becomes necessary for me due to my earlier sacrifices, leading to ongoing frustration about my perceived lack of contribution. The result has been a growing number of arguments fueled by rising tensions. He remains unwilling to risk failure without the additional support, desires me to work with him utilizing that support, but also expects reimbursement, which is frequently beyond my means. Each time, he becomes slightly more upset, insisting that I just don't understand, because I lack my own revenue and financial independence. He is frustrated that I expect him to bear more costs simply because he has more to give, which is a misunderstanding of my intentions. This is merely the enforced circumstance under our current financial reality. His anger often stems from believing that I could have been self-sufficient by now, had I chosen to join the army. While I did explore that possibility and spoke with professionals involved, I chose not to proceed because it would have required me to pause my education and thus would divert us from studying together, potentially jeopardizing his academic success. Unfortunately, he views my decision differently and remains resentful, convinced I could have found another solution. At this point, I am genuinely at a loss for how to manage this situation. Conversations tend to lead nowhere, and I sense an increasing amount of resentment accumulating on his side as he perceives me as expecting him to support us financially. He wants me to take action, either borrow more funds, which I cannot do due to family limitations, enlist in the army, despite my reasons against it, or pivot in some other manner. However, realistic options are scarce, particularly given my limited time away from school. I apologize for any grammatical errors, as English is not my primary language. I also regret the length of this account. I am simply writing everything down to untangle my thoughts, and it is challenging to determine which details may be crucial. I will attempt to condense my message later. How can I effectively manage this scenario? I appreciate any advice or insights on how to navigate this. Story 2. Stay or go. My boyfriend, 30M, owes me 27F6K in rent/living costs. My boyfriend, who is 30 years old, and I, a 27-year-old woman, have been in a relationship for 2.5 years. Prior to our decision to cohabit, I lived independently in a studio apartment for 4 years while he resided with his parents to save money. Throughout our relationship, he has consistently claimed to have savings of approximately $40,000 to $50,000. Given the high cost of living in the Boston area, I am compelled to rent luxury apartments, as other places do not permit my dog, resulting in my own modest savings of less than $2,000. During the summer, a one-bedroom unit became available in my building. I had been paying $2,200 per month for my studio, while the one-bedroom costs $2,600 per month. By this time, we had been dating for nearly 2 years, and my boyfriend had discussed topics like marriage, children, and our future multiple times, making it seem logical for us to move in together. However, upon sharing the news about the apartment, he expressed hesitation and claimed that he could not afford it, despite the fact that his share would only amount to $1,300 a month plus half of the utilities. I was perplexed as to why he could not manage that expense, considering his full-time job pays around $40 an hour, and to my knowledge at the time, he only had a car payment, car insurance, and a phone bill. He had undergone a brief period of unemployment while switching jobs last winter and claimed to be behind on some payments. To help ease the transition, I offered to cover the initial month or two, proposing we split the costs equally afterward, to which he agreed. Before we moved in together, his family often remarked about his messy habits, such as leaving clothes and dishes strewn about and not cleaning up after himself. I attributed this to light-hearted teasing, but hoped he would take our shared living space seriously. Unfortunately, that has not been the case consistently. We officially moved in together in June 2024. For the first 2.5 months, I handled all expenses, including rent, groceries, moving costs, fixtures, and cleaning supplies. The first time he contributed financially was in August, when he provided $750 over the entire month. I work from home while he is employed in a trade. I endeavored to maintain the household, vacuuming, cleaning, and doing laundry throughout the day. Additionally, I prepared his lunches and breakfasts, but I eventually stopped when he began neglecting to return the containers after use, which left them sitting in his car for long periods. Feeling unappreciated and disrespected by this behavior, I decided to prioritize my own expenses. My covering of all costs, while he sent me sporadic payments ranging from $200 to $400 every week, or every other week, continued for some time, but I still found myself shouldering the majority of the household responsibilities. In the fall, I began attending therapy, initially not addressing only this issue, but eventually focusing on it during our sessions. My therapist suggested that we attempt to budget together to gain insight into our spending habits and work towards equity. During a conversation in October, my boyfriend disclosed that he had $12,000 in credit card debt. This was new information for me, but I appreciated his transparency. When I proposed the idea of budgeting together, he became upset at the prospect of reviewing our financial statements, which led to a significant and unresolved argument. Since then, we have had multiple discussions on the topic, often resulting in him building walls against me, denying me access to any of his financial records, and accusing me of lacking trust. At this point, I am starting to feel mistrustful, as I can't comprehend where his money is going. Although he has a considerable credit card balance, I feel he should have been able to reduce it somewhat, especially since he has not consistently covered his portion of our rent. I also suggested that he use some of his savings to pay down his credit card debt or settle what he owes me, which led to further conflict, as he adamantly refused, insisting that he cannot touch that money since it serves as his safety net if something were to happen at work, and he does not have a retirement account. Fast forward to late February. He had been making consistent payments, contributing $400 each Friday for about 4 to 5 weeks, but has not sent me anything since mid-December. This week, I calculated everything, and he currently owes me over $6,000. During this entire time, he has not picked up his share of the household chores. He occasionally shows willingness, mopping or taking out the trash for a day or two without prompting, but more often than not, I am the one managing everything, including purchasing all household supplies. Although he claims he will do laundry, he typically only loads the washing machine and neglects to fold or put away the clothes properly, often leaving them crumpled for me to reorganize later. I believe I would feel less resentful if A, he were more open about his financial circumstances, allowing me to understand what is happening, or B, if he made more effort to contribute in other areas since he cannot support me financially at this time. If the roles were reversed, I would do everything possible to support him and communicate my efforts to rectify the situation. However, he has failed to take similar actions and often remains silent when a week passes without payment. He claims he needs time to sort everything out, which I find unfair, as his financial issues are significantly impacting me. If he paid his portion, I would save around $1,000 a month. Due to his lack of contribution, coupled with my dog's recent heart condition diagnosis that has resulted in $5,000 in veterinary expenses, I have incurred approximately $11,000 in losses. He is aware of this situation but remains silent, leaving me to raise financial concerns. He and his family continue to discuss our potential marriage and future plans. I suspect his parents are unaware of our financial difficulties. I've shared everything with my parents, who had to send me funds for rent once, and they are very disappointed. They suggested that I consider moving back home once our lease concludes so I can save money. I have not mentioned this to him. Recently, he accepted a new job with a higher salary that also offers unlimited overtime. When he received the offer, he told me that this was the opportunity he had been needing, and that I should just wait and see, as everything would soon improve. Since starting this job, he has been making an effort to help more around the house. A part of me wonders if he has been experiencing a depressive episode and if I should have faith in the process, believing he is trying to make things right. While I hope this is the case, I cannot ignore the discrepancy with his savings account. I can only see two possibilities. A, the savings account might be a fabrication, or B, the savings account exists, but he does not value or respect my financial well-being enough to utilize it to address his debt or to pay me back. I am uncertain of any other options. I love him and genuinely want our relationship to succeed, yet the financial strain and the burden of managing the household leave me feeling utterly drained. I cannot afford to pursue an apartment alone. Thus, if we do not move into a family apartment that has been offered to us at a low cost, I will need to return home this summer. While I recognize this situation portrays him as a negligent partner, I know he genuinely loves and cares for me. Many of these issues have surfaced only because we share a living space. I am simply feeling undervalued and unappreciated, which leads to accumulating resentment. I do not wish to end our relationship and currently feel pressured toward that conclusion. I also want to avoid instigating a major confrontation before our lease ends, as I rely on the $6,000 he owes me plus his share of the remaining rent. I worry that if things escalate, I may never see that money again and might have to pursue legal action. Yes, his name appears on the lease, and yes, I have kept meticulous records of all expenses. I consistently invest my efforts into relationships and prefer to give others the benefit of the doubt. Do you believe the new job could be the turning point we need? Should I keep trying and hold on to hope that things will improve? Story 3. Read your damn emails, Karen. I previously worked in an office. The specific nature of the job is not vital to this narrative, so visualize a typical office position. Each January, the Human Resources Department would distribute an email to all staff members containing the employee handbook. This manual included job descriptions, office regulations, and other relevant information. Every year since the PDF handbook was first created, it was titled with the following year to indicate that it was distinct from both the original version and all prior editions. Any modifications were noted next to the corresponding section in the table of contents, allowing employees to see what had changed from the previous year and to familiarize themselves with any new information. With that context, let us introduce Karen. Karen had been with the company for quite some time, roughly 10 years, I believe. She was merely adequate in her role. She would complete tasks, but her approach often left her colleagues miserable. She frequently asked questions that had already been addressed and wasted everyone's time for her amusement. Her behavior towards others was unpleasant, and she made a considerable effort to keep everyone at a distance. The most frustrating aspect of her conduct was her constant search for conflict or reasons to lodge complaints. She had threatened to file lawsuits over trivial matters on several occasions, but would ultimately abandon them, aware that no laws had been violated and that her claims would not progress. She would often remark about suing virtually every business she visited, arguing that she could sustain herself on the settlement and retire early, all over the most minor issues imaginable. Although she performed her duties, we had no legitimate grounds to terminate her employment, especially considering her propensity for litigation, so she remained. Karen's job description, according to the handbook, stipulated the requirement of a bachelor's degree. However, Karen did not possess such a degree, as she had been hired before this became a necessity, thus she was allowed to continue in her position. One day, a higher position became available. A man we will refer to as Terry had recently earned his master's degree after attending night classes for a few years. And since internal promotions are usually preferred over external hires, he was selected for the role. Terry had been with the company for about 4.5 years and was well-liked, excelling in his work. The new position required a master's degree, making him an ideal candidate, and everyone was pleased for him. Everyone, that is, except for Karen. Perpetually on the lookout for something to litigate about, she took offense at not being considered for this promotion, despite being entirely unqualified. Without delay, she accused the company of discrimination and informed our supervisor that her attorney would be reaching out. We were all baffled, as it was abundantly clear that the role demanded a master's degree, and given that she lacked even a bachelor's degree, there was no merit in her being considered. What we eventually discovered was that Karen had retained the original company handbook, titled Company Handbook, and had neglected to open or save any revised editions sent over the past 8 years. She assumed that no modifications had been made and that the handbook was simply circulated annually to ensure that all employees received it. Had she taken the time to open the document, she would have noticed the sections marked as updated in the table of contents. Since Karen frequently threatened legal action, we did not expect much from this situation, considering it was an absurd claim. However, Karen soon submitted her resignation via email, which was filled with wrath, lamenting her inability to endure working in such a discriminatory environment that favored male promotions. When higher management attempted to discuss the issue to clarify the confusion, she bluntly told them to leave her alone and to read the damn email because she owed no further explanation. She fully embraced her role as the difficult employee. Shortly after, we received correspondence from her attorney requesting a settlement to avoid a discrimination lawsuit. What Karen failed to recognize was that our boss's sister-in-law operated a law firm. Although she primarily oversaw other lawyers and no longer took on clients herself, she had ample time to scrutinize any letters from Karen's lawyer and advise us accordingly. Since Karen had not bothered to review any updated handbooks, she was unaware that the position had required a master's degree for several years, approximately 6. She provided her attorney with the outdated company handbook from 9 years ago, which he used as a reference in his settlement demand. It became clear to us that she had not read any new handbooks in years. Because Karen had alienated many people, our boss's sister-in-law decided to personally handle the case. For every letter sent by Karen's attorney, she responded with one 3 times as lengthy. Some content was redundant and verbose, but it ensured that Karen's lawyer would take a considerable amount of time to read through it, and he was not inexpensive. After several exchanges, they recognized that a settlement was unlikely, prompting them to prepare for court. This case was straightforward. Our boss's sister-in-law provided evidence indicating that Karen had received all updates via email. Following the modification and distribution of the handbook, Human Resources even sent an email directly to Karen confirming that she was grandfathered in and need not worry about the changes. Karen responded, "Okay, thank you," confirming that she had received it. The highlight came when our boss's sister-in-law emphasized that they could not violate company policy to provide Karen with a position for which she was entirely unqualified, particularly when it would be unfair to another employee who had gone above and beyond to achieve a master's degree in pursuit of advancement. As a result, Karen faced a substantial, and seriously considerable, bill from her attorney for all of these letters, and the court proceedings, was unemployed, had no one to serve as a positive reference, and had no degree. During her tenure at the company, it had become standard in the industry to require a bachelor's degree, effectively sidelining her career. Additionally, it would be challenging to explain how one could work for a decade without securing a letter of recommendation from anyone in the company. If only she had taken the time to read her emails. In summary, Karen ignored updates to her job description for years, attempted to instigate a lawsuit, incurred significant legal fees, and ultimately rendered herself obsolete in her profession.